Morning, everybody. So I heard that you were letting the void make you think you weren't getting where you want to be. And I'm here to explain to you how that's wrong. So I'm going to be talking about quantum shifting and the liminal phase, etc., or the void, as I like to call it, and strong how strong you are in that void stage determines whether or not you can handle the quantum shift. There's lots of stories you've heard, people who get, millions of dollars and they suddenly lose it. It's because they were not able to live in that liminal phase of uncertainty or the void of uncertainty and second guessing yourself and self doubt. That void, if you can handle that well, you can handle the quantum shift really well. And a lot of people don't talk about this when they talk about quantum shifting, etc., etc. And this is actually where 80% of your time is spent anyway. 80% of our lives is spent in not believing ourselves, thinking that we have cheated the system, thinking that, imposter syndrome, all of those fancy words that we use to explain fear is actually 80% of our time is spent in that, because the other 20% is experiencing the fun of the quantum shift. So to make sure that you collapse the time in that void, you have to get very comfortable somatically with the experience of uncertainty, ambiguity, not knowing if it's going to work out, not knowing if you made the right decision, also questioning what even is a right decision, right? Because a lot of us think a right decision means less consequences, or a right decision means nobody else has opinions about it, or a right decision might mean in your head that I made it with little to no consequence. That's not a right decision. That is just an easy one. And easy decisions don't get quantum shifted into anything. They just die like any other thing that's easy. So if you are making a decision that you know is a quantum shift in your life, you have to be prepared for the past to pull you back, for people in your life to make you second guess yourself, for your own fears to come alive. And how strong you stay in that determines whether or not that reality comes into fruition. It doesn't just happen because you made a decision, it happens because you stuck through it and you believed in yourself. And it's not easy, right? Sometimes it's not easy to believe in yourself. That's why you have systems. Systems help you systemize your decision. The other thing that quantum shifts the world, etc., universe hates is the vacuum. Okay, so in physics, I don't know what it's called exactly. Maybe I can put in the subtitle somewhere when I remember. But the universe hates a vacuum. So every time you make a major decision, and that major decision is, let's say, leaving a relationship, for example, you need to fill up your time, quite literally, you need to get busy. And I know you've probably heard, like, getting busy is not worth it, blah, blah. Of course, not for the long term. But when you're in the void, you need to get busy. Otherwise, you're going to get pulled into that stuff again. You're not going to enjoy it because you made this decision for a reason. So you need to get busy with everything and anything. It could be neutral things, like maybe you want to take more hobbies up, or maybe you want to take a different thing you've been wondering about. And look, it's not going to be fun, right? Like, it's going to be boring, and that's okay. It's better to be bored than to be sad and depressed. Okay, you tell me which one's better. And in the void, like I said, we spend 80% of our lives there. And some of us never quantum shift because we never handle the 80%. And the 80% is not easy. Like, you may get diarrhea, you may get like indigestion, you may get like losses of a big kind. All of that is God preparing you for what you asked for. You know, when they say be careful what you wish for, be very careful what you wish for, because you don't know what's going to come your way in the void, right? And how strong you are, like I said, in the void determines how well you can handle the quantum shift. Instead of, for example, lots of people who win the lottery and then they suddenly lose it all. It's because they were not able to handle what was in the void. We can look at Justin Bieber as a recent example. The last 5-6 years, he's been in the void, right? Like, after he made the decision that I don't want to perform anymore like that, like typically, he had to go through a lot of stuff. He went through drugs, he went through, his marriage, all the stuff we all know. And the reason that he's finally out of it, like I said, 80% of our life is spent like 5-6 years of being in the liminal phase is not easy. And a lot of us have probably are probably in the void right now, or maybe we're coming out of it. Like I think a lot of us in 2026 are coming out of it. But yeah, a lot of your time can be spent in there if you don't know what to expect, what this journey is preparing you for, what your ask is preparing you for, and what God is preparing you for, obviously. So how strong you are in this, that can mean anything. That can mean whether you can handle your anxiety. And by handling, it's not always, obviously you have to handle it positively. Because if you get into drugs or alcohol or cigarettes or vaping or whatever the new vice is these days, you're probably not going to get over it, and you're probably going to be stuck in the void longer. This is how you make your void last longer. I'm in the void right now. I've been in the void for the last 3 weeks, and it's been hell, and there's been some really good days, some really bad days. Today's a good day, so that is why I'm making this video. But maybe tomorrow will be a bad day. I don't know. Who knows, right? However, I am not distracting myself with anything. I'm actually praying more. I'm making more dua. I am sticking to the promises I made to myself. I'm cleaning up my room. I'm doing all the basic stuff. Brushing my teeth, like all the grooming, like, just keeping it very basic, because you need a routine. When you are in the void, the last thing you want is to just stay and hover and, free fall in the void. You do not want to free fall in the void. You're never going to land on ground, right? How do you land on ground? You land on ground with routines. And of course, routines are something that is a constant, and they can always change. However, for now, you need a routine, very simple. Let's say you want to brush your teeth, you want to make your bed. These things are not just like, oh my God, I'm brushing my teeth, I'm cleaning my bed. That's not just the purpose. If you're like me and you don't like to do things unless you see the purpose, then this is for you, right? Like, you need a routine. If you want to see that quantum reality, quantum shift or whatever, then you better get into a routine. You better clean your room every day. You better get that bed ready. You better go to the gym, go for a walk, whatever it is. Have your chai at the same time. Have your breakfast at the same time. All these things, they root you in that void. Now, like I said before, Justin Bieber's void lasted a few years. And a lot of people, Justin Bieber is just like a big example. That's why I gave it to you. But a lot of us actually experience this void, and we don't even know we're in it because it's so much uncertainty. I can go back to a time when I was 14 and my dad took away my phone. And that was the biggest quantum shift I had, because I no longer had the outside world telling me if they approved of me. And so I got so fit. I got so lively. I became such a queen, right? Like, every time I live my life now, I'm like always looking at that version of myself, because I did that, because I didn't have any distractions, and I just prayed. And like I said, I didn't have a vice like that. My vice was the internet, and that was taken away from me, thank God. And when I went back to school after the school break, I was so in love with myself, and so was everybody else, because they were like, damn, like, what'd you do? And I was like, I just didn't use the internet for the last 3 months. So if you are in the void, understand that it can pass you by. It will pass you by. However, you need to stay very strong in your values. This is when the values come very important. You don't just say you value something and you have no idea of how you're experiencing that. A lot of us say things like, I value work-life balance. And it's like, you probably don't value work-life balance. What you value is presence in work and in life, right? That's what you actually value, but you don't know that yet. So be very careful with what you say is your value when you don't really know what it is. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of us say, oh, I want more time with family. However, when you're with your family, you're on your phone. However, when you're with your family, you're like thinking about everything else but the family. That is not you valuing the family. And that's okay. Like, that's no hate. It's just be realistic and be honest about what you actually value and how you are experiencing that value every day. And you can always change the experience, but you do have to be honest with yourself currently. Do you actually value your quantum shift, for example? Okay, you value it. Now, what do you have to do to get there? You need a routine, for example. You need to cut out the vices, because the vices will keep you in there for longer. And this is the reason Islam and Allah has said, don't drink, don't smoke. It's not just because it's bad for our physical health. It's bad for our health. It's bad for our quantum shift. Quite literally. And it might sound crazy what I'm saying, but it's really not. Everybody who is in the void, you can see in many celebrities, and Demi Lovato went through this. A lot of celebrities, I think, mostly from Disney. I think, yeah, mostly from Disney. Let's say they went through the void and they were not able to hold that. I think the only one that survived was probably Hilary Duff, where she held that uncertainty, whether that be her next paycheck, whether that be, do I really want the fame, do I really want Hollywood, whatever it was for her. She survived it. She was not really in the, on the news for a while until very recently, I think, for just existing and living a normal life. That is because she survived the void. A lot of people don't survive the void. Look at Miley Cyrus. She did not survive the void. She was abused by it, and then she made a decision, and then she stuck to it. And so all of these things, they don't just happen by accident. Like celebrities don't just crash out. They are crashing out for a reason. They're crashing out because the void, and we don't have any tools for the void. And so my tool that works all the time is obviously prayer, 5 times a day, right? Shahada, obviously, before that. And just not indulging in vices. It is very, very easy to get stuck in vices. And usually the people who tell you, people don't get involved in drugs when they're having a good time. Who do you know that is like, oh yeah, I was having such a good time and then I took drugs? Like, it's never like that. It's always like, look, I was going through a hell time. A friend offered me a party, and then I did this drug, and then now they're stuck in that addiction. So all of these cycles that we go through, they don't happen by accident. They happen because we're not able to handle the feelings of the void. And so Muslims are very lucky. Like, we are very blessed to have Islam because we are told not to get involved in these vices. We quantum shift faster, or at least we have the ability to. And sometimes your vice not be drugs or alcohol. Sometimes it might be worry. Sometimes it might be letting other people decide for you. All of these are vices. A vice is anything that destroys you. So it doesn't have to be drugs or, like I said, alcohol. So just be mindful, right? Like, moving into the 2026, I know it's not like the beginning, but it is for a lot of people, because at the beginning we had Stranger Things ending, and that was like annoying, because it's like, why didn't you just leave this in 2025? But 2026 for a lot of us is just starting. And so if this is for you, if you are feeling like you're stuck in the void, stay strong. You have got this. Do not get into any vices. And by vices, like I said, it can be any old pattern you don't want to repeat into your new life, right? Like for me, that pattern was people pleasing. That pattern was, does everybody else think my decision is good enough? That was my pattern. And now I'm like, listen, at the end of the day, this is the first and last life I have that I get to experience. So I'm going to make my decision, and your shock and your feelings about it are your feelings about it. They have nothing to do with me, right? That was my pattern that I'm letting go, in the last 2-3 weeks. That was my void. Now I'm getting out of it. I can see some color in the light, in the sun, and in the world. And what helped me get to this point of at least a little bit of stability is not free falling, firstly, having a routine. And I wasn't perfect. I have 2 kids. It's not perfect, right? Your routine changes a lot, especially when your kids don't sleep. But brushing my teeth, going to the gym, trying to go for a walk, cooking, all of these things, playing with my daughter, all of these things are the way I maintain routine. It can be different for you. Maybe you don't have kids. Maybe you don't have more kids. I don't know. Figure out a routine that works for you, okay? Stick to it. This is how you get through the void. You are not experiencing something surreal. You're not experiencing something nobody else has experienced. And don't make the void longer by getting into addictions, by repeating old patterns, by repeating the same vices that you are trying to get rid of. If you do that, you're going to be stuck in there for a while, and your quantum shift is going to have to wait, quite literally. So if you don't want to wait longer than 2-3 months to experience that quantum shift, you better start handling the stuff that you're feeling right now. And the way to handle it is you just systematically stay with it. You don't just vice it away, right? You don't just think it doesn't exist. You don't suppress it. You don't repress it. You systematically finish the cycle. And sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes you have to scream, you have to shout, you have to shake it out. And sometimes you have to pray. So I hope that this message helped at least one person who is in the void and who thinks quantum shifting is very easy and fun in games, how the manifestation gurus talk about it. It's not. It is not, and I don't mean that in a negative way, it's just the reality, right? Like, you can make a decision in the 5D, but in the 3D, it's a lagging indicator and it's not going to happen straight away. I would love for it to happen straight away. It just does not how, it's just not how it works. So if you have made a decision and now you are in the void, and now people from your past are pulling you in to make a different decision or the old decision, you do not have to do that. At the end of the day, this is your only life. This is your only life that will decide if you go heaven or hell. And that heaven or hell can exist in this world too, right? Like, you can make choices now that you might think, oh my God, I'm sacrificing. Sacrificing what? Sacrificing yourself? You know, God loves sacrifice. He does not love self-sacrifice. He loves a self-sacrifice for his cause, for sure, but not self-sacrifice for other people. That is you putting people on a pedestal. That is you idolizing people. So do not self-sacrifice for anybody except for God. That's it. You do not have to sacrifice for nobody else. I promise you, this is your permission to only sacrifice for God. Yes, there are times where you have to sacrifice for the greater good, whatever. Again, that's for God. However, if that is your everyday experience, it is not normal. And if you're feeling resentful, that's a message from God. It's not supposed to be like that. If you are sacrificing and you are at peace with it, good, great. You are doing the right sacrifice. But if you are finding yourself every day and you have to convince yourself every day, like it's a new decision, rethink your decision, babes. Rethink your decision. That is all for today. I hope even one person found it helpful. And I am excited to start this YouTube channel, start this journey with you guys. And yeah, see you next time.